afternoon. So welcome. Welcome to our topic. I'm not claiming to be an expert in this one, but allow me to just share since this is a venue for us to share our experiences. So I volunteered myself to kind of share our practice in our school because this might also help you and give you some insights as you start planning. So allow me to go through it. So I'm sure some of you might be asking why entitle it integration of assessments across subjects. I guess you could say that based on my experience, I feel that it is more meaningful for us or for assessments to be designed wherein you also integrate with other subjects. So for this sharing, I'll give you a brief background or a context on our school, okay, how we did it, how we planned for it, and how I was able to design, okay, our my assessments for the term or for the school year. So I'll give you a touch on my thoughts as I was planning my assessments. And I'll also share to you some of my assessments. So please forgive me if you see a lot of tabs as I share my screen because I'll be sharing my actual documents that I used last school year. So maybe this will also help you give an idea. Okay. After this, we actually were able to evaluate our assessments at the end of the school year. So I'll be sharing also my evaluation or our school's evaluation of the assessments that we conducted last school year. So allow me to start off with our school from Xavier School, Nuvali. But allow me to just ask, maybe you can just raise your hand. I'd like to know who among you hasn't started the school year yet? Okay, can you just give me just raise your hand so I would know if you haven't started the school year? Okay, so there are a couple. Okay, thank you. Thank you. You may lower your hand now. Because to tell you honestly, I think most schools would find the value of planning. I'm sure all schools do this. The planning phase, especially like last year when we started with online distance learning, I'm sure all of us were kind of nervous, stressed out. How are we going to go about it? So definitely the planning phase is very crucial. So our school started, I believe, at the end of July. So over the summer, as early as May, we started planning. We trimmed down the curriculum. We had to change our grading system from a letter grade type of grading system. It went down to just 3, which I will introduce later on when you see my rubric. Okay, schedules had to be changed. It had to be shortened, of course. And because of that, of course, our curriculum would also have to be trimmed down. Okay, but one thing that was emphasized by our school is make sure when you trim down your curriculum, you have to make sure that the skills, the knowledge, and the attitude that you place or you plan in your curriculum, okay, is something that will prepare the students for the 21st century. Okay, that is why during our planning, so there were certain topics that we had to kind of bump off because we needed to focus on the most important thing. Okay, so another thing, as you know, I'm sure most of you felt stressed out when you were actually conducting online distance learning. Still, students too, okay, likewise. So definitely our school emphasized that we needed to ease the burden of our students. Okay, and one way is really to integrate with other subjects. Some of you might say, is that possible? Definitely. Can we integrate all? Maybe not. But as much as possible, try. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's very meaningful when I show you the data later on when we evaluated the assessments that I gave. Okay, so let me start. Oh, yeah, another thing. So when I designed assessments, of course, they told us to make sure it's authentic. Okay. It shows or it demonstrates the competence of the students in real life situations. So definitely, when I designed my assessments, I have to make sure that the assessment that I will give my students will actually definitely prepare them for high school, college, okay, when they grow up. So the first thing that we actually did, okay, after trimming down our curriculum was to have team integration meetings. And of course, before we had these team integration meetings, we had to make sure that our units are prepared. So if you can recall in our last ADL course, okay, we have to always keep in mind the end. Okay, so the backward design by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague, okay, wherein they said that you have to keep in mind the end goal. Okay, so that's why I started thinking, what are my learning outcomes for each unit? Okay, at the end of my unit, what knowledge, skills, and attitudes should my students gain? Okay, and also based on my learning outcomes, that's when I started thinking of what would be a possible assessment to validate what they have learned. Notice possible because this is just proposed, but when later on, when we had our team integration meetings, certain assessments started to change. So I'll be showing you that actually that document that we worked on for this school year. And so after that, after preparing, we had to present our units. Okay, so I'll be showing to you our file. Okay, so if you'll see here, okay, we have here, since I am a grade 6 teacher, so I'm showing to you our file in grade 6. So each grade level would meet and they would discuss, present their units. So I have here my unit. So this is in English. So we also have a subject CLE that presented their units, math as well, okay, Filipino, even art, computer, CMSO, okay, guidance even, because I can actually integrate with the other, not only in the academic subjects, but in other ways. So you see here in my in my unit, so I have here, after thinking of my learning outcome, so I was able to group together certain topics that will prepare them that to be able to reach that goal. So I have here, actually this is for this year. So since it, as we know, the Jesuit community is very big on the Ignatian year this year. So I started planning these things for my first term, and my probable assessment is an expository writing, okay, or an expository article. So I placed here my knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Okay, unit 2 as well. So I have here what I planned, okay, and for unit 3. So if you'll notice, in English, being an English teacher, my main goal is really for students to read, speak, and write. Okay. So most of my assessments would revolve around that. Okay, so you have here. And then after presenting our units, okay, we had, since we kind of have like a projected timeline, we also had our own Gantt chart. So in this Gantt chart that you see, okay, here is a probable, like a timeline that I'll be able to finish my unit by this time, okay, by this time and by this time. So it depends. And so when we would discuss, okay, looking also at the projected timeline, okay, or the timeline of the teacher, we can probably talk about what could be a probable, okay, integration, whether it's formative or summative, or a summative assessment. So you have here a file wherein After our discussion, we were able to summarize and figure out, oh, I think my assessment would be perfect together with CNSO, with science and art, because I think this coming Friday, they have a service interaction. Okay, so I think it's nice that certain subjects would integrate together and have just one output, but a lot of subjects grading that. So I have here others. So this is from other subjects. So technically, based on our integration meetings, we would have like a summary of what we have discussed and maybe talk about, maybe we can integrate together based on your projected timeline. Okay, so that's why we have these planned assessments as well. So after having an assessment planned, okay, of course, we present it to our department chair, okay, and get feedback from them, and of course, start improving on it. Okay, so let me now go through my summative assessments last school year. So the one that I showed you is actually the first term integration planning that we did for this school year. So let me start off with my first term last school year. I started with, in Unit 1, more of a speaking assessment, which is a vlog on their quarantine time capsule. So it's a project in guidance, but I wanted them to express it, or maybe give us a rundown, so like a process analysis kind of speech, talking about the quarantine time capsule. Okay. Then for Unit 2, I don't know if you're familiar, but in online distance learning, a lot of assessments are through a portfolio assessment. Okay, I'll explain that further, but just to give you a brief background, so a portfolio assessment is technically a collection of tasks or collection of asynchronous tasks that you gave your students during your sessions. Okay, so you can also go through that type of assessment. Okay, I wasn't able to integrate during that time because of certain challenges, so I had to think of another way of assessing my students. Another way that I found very meaningful, that the students also found very meaningful, is my Unit 3 assessment, wherein I integrated with SOCSI, because my main goal is really for them to write a persuasive essay, and I had to discuss also propaganda techniques. So we integrated together, since SOCSI's topic was more on the coming of the Americans. So allow me to share to you my grasp. Okay, so this is my document that I submitted to my department chair. So I have here my goals, okay, my role, the role of the student, since they have to choose sides. Okay, are you part of the Filipino Revolution, or are you part of the American government? Okay, so I placed here the expected output as well, your audience, who will be your audience, the situation, and my product, which is technically 3 outputs. One is a propaganda poster, okay, an outline, because I have to see how they organize their ideas, and of course their persuasive essay. Okay, so how do we grade them? As I mentioned before, we trimmed down our grading system, so we have with distinction, pass, and insufficient evidence. Okay, so in your rubric, it's better actually if you are clear, like your evidence of learnings are also clear here. So what makes this product a with distinction? So you have to really give details about it. What would you consider as passing? Okay, and what would you consider as insufficient evidence? They weren't able to meet the expected output, okay, that I want them to do. So part 1 is their poster, their outline, and of course, their persuasive essay. So this is how I did my assessment. If you're familiar with Ruth Cullum's 6+1 writing traits, I didn't put all my 6+1. I had to focus on certain writing traits, specifically ideas, sentence fluency, and conventions. So when I was formulating this assessment, I also taught them how to use nouns properly. We had discussions on sentence errors. Of course, there's also the discussion on how to write a persuasive essay. So we went through that as well, and making an outline. So that was my term 1. Okay. For term 2, I wasn't able to find find a subject that I could integrate with. Okay, so instead I thought of an authentic assessment, which is their yearbook write-up, since they are in grade 6. Okay, so they are a graduating batch. So they really have to write a yearbook write-up. So my topics here during that time is adjectives and adverbs. Okay, personal narrative. So that is my Unit 1 summative assessment. My second summative assessment was a portfolio assessment, again, because of limited time as well. And then my third assessment is a literature circles on Tolstoy. Okay, I'm sure some of you are very familiar with literature circles, and it's definitely a challenge to do literature circles online, but we were able to do so. And how did I assess it? Because technically it's a group activity, but if you are clear in your rubric, then I think it will be easier. Okay, so allow me to share to you, sorry. Okay, so this is my yearbook write-up summative assessment, wherein again by Ruth Column, the 6+1 writing traits. Some of the writing traits are here. Okay, and then I have here my Tolstoy circle. So it's a literature circles on the novel by Candy Gourlay entitled Tolstoy. So I have here my grasp. Now, how was I able to accomplish, or how was I able to grade them? So of course, the important parts is, were they able to prepare for literature circles? So of course, the role sheets, were they able to do that? So you have to clarify that. In the discussion, were they able to facilitate the discussion? Were they able to support, okay, their answers with text from the book? Okay, participation as well, because of course in literature circles you really need to participate. Okay, so that is also one of the things that I am looking for. And of course, behavior and teamwork. So in this case, I had to actually let each member kind of rate their groupmate as well to see. But the final output of this is actually a recording of their literature circles. So I can also see how they would respond to certain questions. Okay, so this is my term 2. And then for my term 3, okay, I only had 2 assessments, a portfolio assessment on A Wrinkle in Time. As an English subject, of course, we need to discuss the elements of a story. So one way for me to assess it is through graphic organizers. So for each element, so they are given a task. So by the end of our discussion, we just collect all those graphic organizers and put it in a portfolio. Okay, and that's how I assess it. And of course, being a graduating batch, their thank you speech, which is both a speaking and writing assessment. Okay, so that's how I was able to design my summative assessments for last school year. Okay, if you were to ask me, will I do the same for this school year? Maybe I'll be tweaking some assessments, because this is based on our curriculum audit. Okay, because after that, I noticed that one big challenge in an ODL class setting is their submission. Okay, so in fact, portfolio assessments would take time. I would often remind the students to pass on time. So even if you give them enough time to do it during your session, Okay, sometimes they get easily distracted. So that was one challenge. So I'll be presenting to you how we were able to evaluate each assessment through a curriculum audit. Okay, so I'll be showing to you the curriculum audit that we did. I hope you can see it. So here in our curriculum audit, based on my unit and my assessment, okay, we kind of look at the data, how many got with distinction, which is the highest, okay, who got a passing rate and who got an insufficient evidence. Okay, I have here comments. So 4, in a way, failed. They got an insufficient evidence, and 15% of them got that grade because they weren't able to submit on time. Okay, so for my second assessment, for the vlog, okay, 3 people, so 100%. So these 3 people got an IE because they weren't able to submit as well on time. Okay, the persuasive article, only 1 person. So if you look at it, the things wherein I would integrate with a certain subject, okay, a lot of people would be, I guess, from my observation, they get excited about it, especially when when it is combined with another subject as well. They also kind of feel that it has more weight, okay? And not only that, they are given more time to work on their assessment, because not only do I give them time to do it during my class, but also in the other subject, they are also given time to work on it. And so that's why, in terms of the passing rate, okay, almost everybody passed. So for my second trimester, so as you can see, when it comes to a portfolio assessment, okay, it takes a while for them to really pass on time. How I want to be remembered, my yearbook write-up, everybody passed. Okay, that is because probably I mentioned to them that it will be published. So since they know that it is going to be an actual product, they will see it on their actual yearbook. Of course, they wanted to submit it on time. Not only that, gain feedback from the teacher, okay, so that they can improve on their write-up. So I think that if you design an assessment that they know will be published, okay, that they will actually see, okay, their output is actually a lot better. That is my observation. For lit circles, some of them actually kind of had difficulty. Well, more on, a lot of people are kind of shy or conscious in grade 6, so not they only respond to certain questions but wouldn't add more. But technically, so yeah, so there were a couple who passed, did not pass. But in my thank you speech, again, they know that I will be choosing one of them to deliver a thank you speech based on their writing. So all of them really worked on it very hard and passed it on time. So based on it, I guess, how would I evaluate my assessments? Definitely integrating with other subjects in terms of passing and their outputs, the quality of their work is much higher. Okay. Not only that, I also observed if they know that the output will be published, it will be, they can actually see it, okay, they will really work hard on it and produce a really quality work. Okay, so just to check. So I guess that ends my sharing regarding my experience when I designed my assessments. And again, I'm not claiming that I am an expert, okay, but I'm just sharing my experience because it might help you and gain some insights when you start doing your assessments as well, when, for some of you, when they start the school year. Okay, so I guess I will end my sharing there. Please use this venue for you to kind of share your experience as well when you design your assessment, because we're learning from each other. I'm sure some of you would like to share some ways wherein their assessment was very successful or maybe unsuccessful. So we can work on it on how to better design our assessments. Okay, so Laika?
Thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful, for sharing your wonderful insights.
Thank you.
This is our we will be starting our Q&A session now. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them via chat or unmute yourselves. I have received the question, ma'am. A participant asked, in the propaganda essay, how were the rubrics designed along with Sockside?
Okay, allow me to, so wait a minute. So I showed you my rubric in English. So of course, for Sockside, they had a different rubric. So maybe I can share to you the rubric of Sockside, just in case you're kind of interested in knowing about it. Can you just give me some time to look for it? Okay. But actually, he had his own rubric as well. The Sockside teacher had his own rubric. So allow me to share screen. I'm actually using Google Classroom. So how I want homophones performance task here. Okay. So for the persuasive article, so allow me to share. So my rubric is here. And for the Sockside, we attach the rubric also in this Google Classroom, which is shared with the teacher. So here is for Sockside, just in case. So the stance of the student when it comes to justifying the positive or negative effects of the presence of the American in the Philippines. So the stance, persuasiveness, and I believe historical accuracy. So this was made clear in the rubric when we gave this to the student. So I hope I was able to answer your question. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question here. Ma'am Pearl said, thank you for sharing your rubric. Do you assign points to your rubric? Do your students get a score at the end of each assessment?
I think in our school, we really don't use points or numerical values. We do use descriptions. So as you noticed, we label it as with distinction, meaning a really good work, passing, or insufficient evidence. They weren't able to meet the objectives. So we would have to, that's why it's important that in your rubric, your details are very clear. Although we don't use the numerical value or a certain point system, okay, the details are there so that they know that, oh, I fall under with distinction or I fall under passing grade. Now, there are times, because you might say that it's still kind of subjective. So we do explain it to the student, why you got a with distinction, why you got a passing grade. And if they also ask, we do explain why this is your grade. So yes. Thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you as well. Maybe in the Padlet form, you can share also your thoughts about it, because again, as I mentioned, we're using this venue to learn from each other. So I'd appreciate it if you would also share your experiences.